My name is Susan, and I am 34 years old. This past Christmas was the first one without my husband. He died in March from a sudden heart attack that split our life clean in half and left me standing in the quiet aftermath with an 8-year-old who still expected the world to make sense. Our daughter Mia doesn't know the details of what happened that morning, only that her dad kissed her forehead before school and never came home. Since then, I've been saving every spare dollar just to keep things steady. The lights on, food in the fridge, her favorite cereal on the shelf, so at least mornings still felt normal. I don't cry much anymore, not because it doesn't hurt, but because I ran out of tears months ago and had to learn how to function without them. In early December, my parents called. Mom spoke first, her voice careful and sweet, the way she gets when she's about to ask for understanding instead of offering it. She said they were doing a no-gift Christmas this year because money was tight. Dad had dental surgery, she said, and they were helping Tiffany again with some medical expenses, which I've come to understand usually means covering for another one of my sister's impulsive spending spirals. I didn't argue. I didn't even hesitate. I said that was fine, that we could just do a small dinner and focus on being together. I didn't ask for help with Mia's Christmas, even though I could barely afford the off-brand Lego set I found on eBay. I'd learned a long time ago not to expect fairness, only to accept what was offered. We drove over to my parents' house on Christmas Eve. The driveway was packed, which struck me as odd for a no-gift small dinner situation, but I kept my mouth shut. Inside, the living room was chaos. Wrapping paper everywhere. Tiffany's twins tearing into boxes like it was a competition. I saw iPhones first, then Apple Watches, then thick envelopes stuffed with cash that the kids shook like maracas while screaming numbers at each other. Tiffany stood in the middle of it all with a mimosa in her hand, laughing loudly and yelling something about Santa being rich this year. My stomach dropped, but I stayed still. Mia tightened her grip on my hand and looked up at me, confused. She whispered, "Are we opening presents later, or did Santa forget us?" I felt my throat close. I turned to my dad and said the only thing I could manage. "I thought you said no gifts this year." He laughed. Not awkwardly, not apologetically, just laughed like I'd said something silly. "Don't make a scene, Susan," he said. "It's Christmas." So I didn't make a scene. I smiled, helped clear plates after dinner, thanked them for the casserole, and drove home with a knot in my chest so tight I could barely breathe. Mia fell asleep in the car, clutching the single stuffed unicorn I bought her with grocery money. I carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and sat on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing for a long time. Christmas morning came quietly. I made coffee, watched Mia open her unicorn again like it was brand new, and pretended this was enough. Then I opened Facebook. Tiffany had posted a dozen photos already. One caption read, "Grandma and Grandpa really went all out." Another said, "Best Christmas ever." The twins posed like influencers, new phones in hand, cash fanned out, smiling wide. I stared at the screen until something in me went numb. Then I opened my own page and uploaded one picture, Mia in her pajamas, sitting beside our tiny plastic tree with her unicorn and a bowl of cereal. My caption was short and honest. No gifts this year. Money's tight, my parents told me. Within minutes, my phone exploded. Calls, messages, missed notifications stacking faster than I could clear them. And in that moment, I realized the truth had done something my silence never could. The silence after I hit post lasted exactly 9 minutes. I remember because I watched the clock on the microwave while my phone lay face down on the counter, vibrating itself across the granite like it was trying to escape. When I finally picked it up, there were 12 missed calls. First my mom, then my dad, then Tiffany, then my mom again. Voicemails stacked on top of each other, messages in all caps, notifications from people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly concerned about my well-being. It wasn't guilt that set them off. It was exposure. I answered my mom's call first. She didn't ask how Mia was. She didn't say Merry Christmas. She went straight into a speech about how I was twisting things and making them look bad. She said people from church had already seen the post and were asking questions. She said I didn't have the right to air family business like that. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. Not because I respected what she was saying, but because I wanted to hear how far she'd go to defend it. She said the no-gift rule was meant for adults, that they assumed I'd still get Mia something small, that the phones were last-minute deals they couldn't return, that Tiffany's kids needed them for school. Each excuse stacked on the next until even she sounded tired of hearing herself. Then Dad called, and he was worse. He accused me of using my daughter for pity likes, said I was being petty over a miscommunication, told me I needed to take the post down before things got uglier. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said, sure, and ended the call. I sat down at my laptop and opened a folder I hadn't touched in weeks. It was the renovation spreadsheet. Permits, materials, labor estimates, all paid in my name. Over the past few months, I'd covered everything for their second-floor remodel, the insulation, the electrical prep, even the permits. The big install was scheduled for early January. Cabinets, plumbing, floors, the most expensive part. I was supposed to pay that in full on January 5th. They'd never asked if I was still comfortable doing that after Ben died. They just assumed. That evening, I sent a single message to the family group chat. Just a heads up, due to some unexpected personal financial changes, I won't be able to cover the remaining cost of the second floor renovation. You'll need to work that out directly with the contractor. Hope you understand. I didn't add emojis. I didn't explain. I hit send and waited. The response came before dinner. Dad texted first, asking if I was joking, reminding me about non-refundable deposits. Mom followed, confused and hurt, asking if this was about the Christmas post. Then Tiffany sent a voice note. She didn't yell. She spoke in that smug, calm tone she uses when she thinks she's being reasonable. She said I needed to be an adult, that I couldn't hold a grudge over some silly phones. She ended with, "You're not really going to screw over Mom and Dad because you felt left out, are you?" No, Tiffany, not because I felt left out, because I was done being used. I didn't even say no. I said I needed time. The next morning, I told Mom I was looking into alternative ways to help and needed a few days to sort things out. I knew exactly what I was doing. The closer it got to the start date, the worse it would hit. They started scrambling. Mom dropped off a tin of sugar cookies and $40 in an envelope for Mia, pretending it was generous. Dad asked if he should reschedule the contractor or wait. I told him to wait. Then Tiffany sent me a screenshot by accident, a group chat with her friends, mocking me for making Christmas about money, saying I always played the struggling widow card. She followed it with, "Oops, but seriously, don't drag this out. You're being spiteful." That was the moment something shifted. Not anger, not sadness, power. For the first time in years, I felt it settle in my chest. They thought my kindness was guaranteed. They thought my silence meant consent. They were wrong, and they were starting to realize it. The first week of January arrived gray and heavy, the kind of cold that seeps into everything and makes time feel slower than it should. I kept stringing them along, always just vague enough to keep them hopeful. I told Dad I was waiting on a payment issue to clear. I told Mom I needed to finalize a few things with the bank. None of it was true. I had the money. I just wasn't going to spend another cent on people who had shown me exactly how conditional their love was. They tried a different approach. Mom stopped by unannounced with another tin of cookies and that same careful smile, the one she uses when she thinks generosity can fix anything. She lingered in the doorway, asking how Mia was, telling me how much she missed her, how the house felt empty without us. I thanked her, took the cookies, and didn't invite her in. Dad started texting more frequently, asking if he should confirm the start date with the contractor or hold off a little longer. I told him to wait. Tiffany stayed quiet for a day, then two, which was unusual enough to make my stomach tighten. That's when Lisa texted me. "Hey, did you give your mom permission to sell your baby furniture?" I stared at the message, not understanding at first. "What baby furniture?" I wrote back. She replied with a screenshot from a local resale group. My mother's name was right there under the photos. Vintage nursery pieces, lightly used, must go. The pictures showed Mia's old crib, the rocking chair Ben painted by hand when I was pregnant, the small bookshelf we used in our first apartment. I felt something crack open in my chest that had nothing to do with Christmas. I hadn't seen that furniture in a while. I'd stored it at my parents' house after downsizing, and my mom promised she'd keep it safe in the attic until I needed it again. I sent her the screenshot with a single line. "You sold Ben's chair." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "You never said you still needed it. We thought it was just clutter. Clutter." The chair my husband spent nights sanding and painting while talking to our unborn daughter was clutter to her. I didn't answer. Not right away. I needed to sit with what that meant. Then Tiffany sent a voice note, her tone falsely relaxed, the way she sounds when she's about to be cruel but wants plausible deniability. She said I was dragging things out too long, that the contractor was getting impatient, that I'd said I'd help and was now punishing Mom and Dad because I felt sorry for myself. She finished by telling me to grow up. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly who she'd always been. Instead of replying, I opened my email and wrote directly to the contractor. I explained that I was withdrawing my financial support immediately and that any future arrangements should be made with my parents. I didn't copy Mom or Dad. I let them find out on their own. The response came quickly, professional and clipped. He said he'd reach out to my parents and reassess the project scope. Dad called 5 times in an hour. I didn't answer. He left one voicemail, his voice tight with anger and fear, accusing me of embarrassing him and destroying the family's trust. I didn't listen to the rest. The most unexpected blow came that afternoon when I picked Mia up from school. Her teacher asked if she could speak with me privately. She said Mia had been withdrawn all week and finally broke down at lunch, crying that she didn't want to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house anymore. I asked Mia why once we were in the car. She looked down at her hands and said, "Because they told me Daddy didn't leave us anything. That's why we're poor now." I pulled over. I couldn't drive. The words felt like poison spreading through me, fast and uncontrollable. They'd said that to my child. They'd taken Ben's death and turned it into a story that made her feel small and ashamed. I didn't correct Mia in that moment. I told her we were okay and that she was safe. She nodded and went back to humming, flipping through her new sketchpad like nothing had happened. But something inside me hardened into certainty. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about favoritism or renovation or pride. They had crossed a line there was no erasing. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before sunrise. Missed calls, long voicemails, messages from Tiffany accusing me of having a mental episode and threatening to ruin their house over a mood swing. I didn't respond. I called the contractor again and confirmed my withdrawal in writing, asking him to remove my name from all future communication. He sounded relieved, said he'd been getting mixed messages, and thanked me for being upfront. An hour later, Dad showed up at my door. I watched him through the peephole as he rang twice and then stood there, shoulders slumped. I didn't open the door. He left after a few minutes. 10 minutes later, he texted, "You've made your point. Come by tonight. Let's talk like adults." I didn't reply. I forwarded every invoice, receipt, and agreement related to the renovation to his email instead. Then I sat back and waited. That night, Mom called. For the first time, she didn't sound angry. She sounded tired. She admitted they didn't have the money and asked if I could just front the rest and they'd pay me back over time. I asked her one question. "Would you have done any of this for me?" She didn't answer. The next day, Tiffany posted a passive-aggressive update about family betrayal and dead men's memories. I didn't respond. They were grasping now, reaching for guilt wherever they could find it. But the worst was still coming, and they didn't realize how close I was to ending it for good. They didn't stop, they just changed tactics. The guilt shifted from loud to calculated. My mom sent a long email that read like a confession and a sermon at the same time. She listed every sacrifice they'd ever made for me, every ride to school, every meal cooked, every dollar they claimed to have spent keeping the family together. The words were familiar, heavy with obligation, and buried near the end was the line she thought would undo me. "You could at least follow through on what you promised. It's just money." Just money, as if money hadn't become the excuse for every lie, every double standard, every time they chose my sister over me. Dad tried next. He showed up again with a folder tucked under his arm like a peace offering. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the Ring camera, my voice steady, while he explained a payment plan they'd drafted. I could cover the renovation up front, he said, and they'd pay me back in monthly installments. He talked like we were partners in a business deal, not a family that had just torn itself apart. Before he left, he said something that stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. "You're letting your grief cloud your judgment. Ben wouldn't want this." That was the moment it finally clicked. They only mentioned my husband when they needed leverage. Ben had never been family to them in any meaningful way. He was polite company when he was alive, and a convenient moral weapon now that he wasn't. I watched my dad walk back to his car through the camera and felt something shut down inside me, quiet and final. Tiffany escalated. Her messages swung between passive and vicious, sometimes in the same hour. One minute she told me I was hurting Mom. The next she said it was no wonder I was alone. She sent a photo of her twins at a trampoline park, smiling wide, like proof that life went on just fine without me. I stopped replying altogether. There was nothing left to say to someone who measured love in favors and obedience. Then they went after Mia. It started with voicemails on her tablet, cheerful voices telling her how much Grandma and Grandpa missed her, how sad they were she didn't visit anymore, how they didn't mean to upset Mommy. I deleted them before she could listen. Then a package arrived, addressed to Mia in bright marker. Inside was a stuffed animal, soft and oversized, with a small voice recorder stitched into the back. When Mia pressed it, my dad's voice played. "Grandpa loves you. Don't forget us." She looked up at me and asked if we weren't going to see them anymore. I told her maybe not for a while. It was a lie, but it was the kind you tell to protect a child from adult cruelty. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the floor of her room holding that stuffed animal and felt the last of my hesitation burn away. This wasn't desperation anymore. It was manipulation, and they were willing to use my child to get what they wanted. The next week was an avalanche. Letters arrived at my neighbor Lisa's house because I'd stopped answering the door. She called laughing at first, then stopped laughing when she realized how unhinged they were. My mom wrote 4 pages about forgiveness and moving forward, ending with a request that I apologize for making things public. Dad sent a typed list of renovation costs with angry circles around the biggest numbers, and a note reminding me not to forget everything they'd done for me. Tiffany's letter was the worst, cold and threatening, suggesting they might pursue other options if I didn't make things right. Other options. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't unblock. I didn't explain. I let the silence do the work. The contractor emailed one last time, professional and brief, to say the project was officially pulled from his calendar. He thanked me for being upfront and said I'd probably saved him from a lawsuit. That email felt like closure in a way nothing else had. That night, Mia and I sat on the couch eating popcorn and watching a movie. Halfway through, she leaned against me and whispered that she liked it better like this. I didn't ask what she meant because I already knew. After she went to bed, I blocked my parents and my sister everywhere. Every number, every email, every account. It wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. The silence that followed felt strange at first, like standing in a room after the noise stops. I kept expecting them to find another way in, but nothing came. No calls, no messages, no guilt wrapped in concern, just quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be chosen, and I wasn't afraid of what came next. The quiet didn't break after that. It settled in. Days passed without my phone lighting up, without the familiar knot in my stomach that used to come with every notification. No calls from my parents pretending nothing had happened. No messages from Tiffany trying to bait me into another argument. No sudden emergencies that only I was expected to fix. At first, the silence felt unnatural, like I'd stepped out into open air after years underground and my lungs didn't know what to do with it. Then it started to feel like relief. Mia adjusted faster than I expected. Children always do when the chaos leaves the room. She stopped asking about her grandparents entirely. She focused on school, on art club, on the tiny rituals we'd built for ourselves. Pancakes on Saturdays, movie nights on the couch. One afternoon she asked if we could paint her room. She said she was tired of the baby color and wanted something new. We went to the hardware store and picked out paint samples that made no sense together. Yellow, purple, silver. It took 2 weekends, but when we were done, her room looked like a sky exploded with stars. In the corner, she painted a small red rocket and wrote, in crooked letters, "Daddy sees me from here." I stood there for a long time and let that be enough. The letters eventually stopped. Lisa handed me the shoebox she'd been collecting them in and asked if I wanted to read them now. I told her no, and thanked her for keeping them out of my house. I didn't need to hear more explanations or apologies that came with conditions. I already knew everything I needed to know. People who only show up when they want something aren't family. They're a transaction. The house felt lighter once I stopped bracing for impact. I rearranged the living room, moved Mia's play area to the back, where the sunlight came in softer. I changed the curtains, not because I was hiding, but because I wanted to stop seeing the street where I'd once waited for people who never came for the right reasons. Spring crept in slowly, and with it came a sense of forward motion I hadn't felt since before Ben died. Sometimes I wondered what story they were telling about me now. I knew I was probably the villain in it, the ungrateful daughter, the bitter widow, the one who made things public. I made peace with that. If protecting my child and myself made me the bad guy, I could live with it. I'd spent too many years being good in ways that only hurt me. One evening, as I tucked Mia into bed, she asked if Santa would come next year. I smiled and told her Santa never forgets people who take care of each other. She nodded, satisfied, and rolled over, hugging her unicorn, the same one that started all of this, the only gift she'd had that Christmas, and somehow the most important one. I didn't win anything by cutting them off. I didn't get revenge. I didn't prove a point in the way they expected. What I did get was space to breathe, room to heal, and the ability to raise my daughter without teaching her that love is something you earn by staying quiet. That was the real gift, one they could never take back. And this time it was enough.